Date with Virgin Atlantic and Delta. Go to virginatlantic.com today to start planning your American adventure. Terms and conditions apply.
Vauxhall Vivaro, for the van man driving to Derby, for the van woman delivering to Cardiff, for the van drivers of Great Britain. 4 years free servicing, 4 years warranty, 4 years roadside assistance, 4 years 0% APR. Vauxhall, British brand since 1903. Conditional sale, 4 years 0% APR. Minimum 18% deposit plus VAT at 20% on total price. Financed by Vauxhall Finance, subject to status. 18 plus business users only. T's and C's, mileage limitations and exclusions apply. Search Vivaro offers.
For everyone who wants more from their broadband. For everyone who wants to stream box sets day and night. For everyone who wants to listen to their playlists upstairs and down. Switch to TalkRadio. We've got your back. Our totally unlimited fibre comes with our powerful Wi-Fi hub, giving you a Wi-Fi signal that can't be beaten by any of the other big providers. And a guarantee that if you don't love your new fibre, you're free to leave any time in your first 30 days. And it's 30% off right now. So why wouldn't you switch? Talk for everyone. 18-month contract conditions apply.
The Jeremy Kyle Radio Show on Talk Radio.
We'll get you talking.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
Talk Radio, on the hour news headlines.
From the Sky News Centre at 4, Tony Blair's described former UN Secretary-General Kofi Annan as a true statesman and says he's shocked to hear he's died at the age of 80. Mr Annan clashed with Mr Blair over the 2003 invasion of Iraq, but they stayed good friends. Kate Robertson is founder of One Young World.
This wonderful man who, when you spoke, compelled you to listen to him. Very dignified, very strong, absolutely passionate about young leaders. And that's why I'm here today. For me, Africa's greatest statesman.
18 victims of Tuesday's bridge collapse in Genoa have been remembered at a state funeral. Over 40 people have died in the tragedy. Rescuers in helicopters and boats are trying to get stranded villagers in southern India after more than 300 people died in monsoon floods. Over 200,000 have been displaced. A teenager's been charged with attempted robbery after a 93-year-old woman was attacked at a bus stop in Oldham. A 17-year-old boy handed himself into Greater Manchester Police last night. Nigel Farage is returning to frontline politics to fight back against what he describes as Theresa May's fraudulent Brexit plan. The former UKIP leader will take part in a battle bus tour by the Leave Means Leave group. In sport, Tottenham are back at Wembley for their Premier League match with Fulham. Live to Andrew Cheel.
It's Spurs 1, Fulham 0 at half-time. Spurs fully deserving the half-time lead given to them just before the break by Lucas Moura, a screaming left footer into the top corner. They've had 3 or 4 other good chances too of Spurs. For Fulham, Sessegnon and Kearney have both forced good saves from Spurs keeper Lloris. Tottenham fans may be grumpy that the new White Hart Lane Stadium is not ready, but they're happy enough with what they're seeing at Wembley. Spurs 1, Fulham 0.
Celtic progressed in the Scottish League Cup with a 3-1 win at Partick, and England's cricketers went wicketless as India fought back before tea in the third test at Trent Bridge. The tourists reached the break on 189 for 3. That's the latest. I'm Tanya Snuggs.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
The Saturday Show with Alexis Conrad on Talk Radio. He's the man who's working for the weekend with the sharpest talk and entertainment on the radio. News, views and wall-to-wall disagreement. The Saturday Show with Alexis Conrad on Talk Radio.
Hello, and welcome to the show with me, Alexis Conrad, here on Talk Radio. What a 3 hours that was. Jeremy Kyle there, storming it with his first show back. Of course, he's been an old pro, so he knows what he's doing. And he made me laugh quite a lot. And he reminded me how I was bullied at school. No, I wasn't bullied at school, but the Alexis Carrington joke is one that I hadn't heard for about, 30 years. So thank you to Jeremy. He's going to be here again, of course, next Saturday. With me in the studio, as ever, I have Andre Walker.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well. Are you ready to wind me up again?
I'm feeling great that a major national newspaper said that I infuriated you last week.
Yes. and they quoted me saying, stop spouting crap or whatever I told you last week.
I love the way they bleeped that out on the video, but Talk Radio didn't bleep it out in real life.
No, you can say crap on the radio. Well, we do all the time. And now, this is what you've got to look forward to. We are going to start with Brexit. And I am thrilled because in the studio joining us today, we have got Jason Hunter. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Jason has been, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you have negotiated trade deals pretty much all over the globe. And when it comes to trade, you've been there and you've done it.
Kinda, yeah. I've lived and worked in over a dozen countries around the world. The Hong Kong government flew me out to represent them in international arbitration cases as an expert witness. Negotiated billions of dollars of trade deals inside and outside the EU. So all of this WTO deal and WTO terms and stuff, it sounds really boring, but it's actually quite interesting if you're a nerd.
Well, look, I mean, I'll be honest, and I'm sure a lot of people listening will go, well, do I need to know and do I need to understand all this stuff? And my answer to that is the problem is that a lot of people are using information and language to sell their point, whether it's on the Remain side or on the Leave side. And the thing is that we need to understand it as a public because we need to be able to question it. I mean, Jeremy Kyle had Nigel Farage on his show, Starter, and Nigel Farage, big announcement today. He's back into politics. Classically, and a lot of people predicted this, he's going to go away for a while and then he's going to come back and saying, I need to come back because Brexit's not being done properly. And of course, he's got people to blame. Not himself, obviously. But he's got other people to blame. And, this is going to be the thing. This is why I think that this country is in a lot of trouble at the moment because we are hugely divided. And whichever way this goes, there are going to be people blaming the others on the other side. If Brexit doesn't go the way we want it to go, there's going to be people to be blamed on either side. So, I want to talk about a few things to help us sort of clear up some of the phrases that we keep hearing. So, for example, the top phrase that we've got at the moment, a no deal, there's no such thing as a no deal. We fall back into WTO trade. And Nigel Farage, and I believe many others, I think Richard Tice was also quoted as saying that he said, Richard Tice from leave.eu says, or leave means leave as well now, I think he says, WTO rules are what most great countries trade under. If it's good enough for Australia, America and Canada, it's good enough for the UK. Nigel Farage earlier on in his interview with Jeremy Kyle said, America trades all over the world pretty much on WTO rules. It took me about 4 minutes to go online and just check that, to find that both those statements are just, in fact, a lie.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Alex. Well, people say, look, I've got an opinion and it's different to yours and that's okay. Your opinion, Brexiteers' opinion, might be that horses can fly. My opinion is that horses cannot fly because I'm basing my opinion on facts and evidence. And facts matter. They're really, really important. And you can stick that on my bloomin' headstone, said Sheila Fogarty. Facts matter. And these people are going around making stuff up and it's just absolutely categorically not true.
So let's deal with these statements. And by the way, Jason's going to be here for the hour. We're also going to be joined on the line actually by Jordan Ryan, who's deputy editor of Brexit Central. Andre celebrating there. But look. I've always said this show is the show where everyone's entitled to their own opinion, which is why Andre's here, but you're not entitled to your own facts, which is sometimes why I shout at Andre. But in all seriousness, rather than having a shouting match, I just want to get to the actual facts. Now, the interpretation of the facts can be one way or another, but let's try and keep it civil. Let's try and keep it about the facts and what's actually possible. Jason's going to be here for the entire hour and into the next hour. So this is your opportunity. If you disagree with what Jason says, if you disagree and you think that Brexit's fantastic and it's a great opportunity, and if you're a big fan of calling everything you disagree with Project Fear, guess what? This is the show for you. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number that you need. You could tweet us at TalkRadio. You can text your message. Text TALK followed by your message to 87222. And ask the question. Just ask the question. If you think Jason's wrong, if you think I'm wrong, if you think Andre's wrong, just give us a call. Tell us what you think. And maybe, just maybe, by being civil and having a proper conversation, we could just get to the facts and then we can make up our own minds. So let's deal with this lie, let's call it that, because that's what it is. America does all its trades pretty much around the world on WTO rules. Why is that inaccurate?
Well, let's take the trade from the UK, for example. The United States of America take about 25% of our exports. About half our exports go to the European Union, just under. Another 25% goes to the States. The European Union and the USA have over 26 different agreements and cooperation agreements which make trade easier between the EU and the USA. That's not WTO because you've got trade arrangements.
It's free trade agreements, basically.
They're not free trade agreements because free trade agreements like a marriage. You take a long while to get there. Before you get married, you get engaged and you spend a bit of time being engaged. Before you're engaged, you maybe have a few dates. Before you have a few dates, you might have a few phone calls. So you start off when you're developing a free trade agreement with another organization, another trade bloc or another country by putting these individual pieces together. Now, with the European Union, we have over 749 different arrangements and agreements as part of our EU membership, all of which are gone. And we should really start from the top. And if we're talking about facts, there is no deal to be done. That's quite fundamental.
What do you mean by that? You mean there's no deal between us and the EU to be done?
Correct.
Now, what about... Okay, I'll let you go and explain that before I ask my questions. Go on.
All right, here's a little bit of homework for the listeners. Go to Google Article 50 Lisbon Treaty. Have a look at it. Paragraph 3 of Article 50 says that 2 years after a member state has invoked Article 50 of the Treaty of Lisbon, all of the treaties related to that member state finish 2 years afterwards, unless a later date is agreed unanimously by all the members. So we are leaving the European Union as it stands today. It's not a negotiation about what kind of deal we're going to have in the future. It's about how all of our agreements cease and terminate. We've been given 2 years to get our house in order, get prepared, prepare our schedule of tariffs for joining the WTO and expanding our membership of the WTO, preparing how are we going to regulate the engineers and the people that refuel our aircraft? Because today you've got to have a certain qualification and accreditation to be able to put fuel in an aeroplane when it lands at a British airport.
Yeah.
We won't be accredited anymore after March the 29th next year. 11:01 p.m. Aeroplanes that are sitting here, we won't be able to fix them, won't be able to maintain them.
But you see, I see Andre furiously writing down stuff, and I'm going to go back. I'm going to use a little bit of Ian Duncan Smith's article that he wrote for The Telegraph, where he basically said Project Fear and Project Fear and Project Fear. My question to Brexiteers about Project Fear, and feel free to call 0344 499 1000 is the number that you need. What does Project Fear mean? Because at the moment, I think Project Fear actually means stuff that you just don't agree with or you don't like the sound of. Because, again... And I'm talking to you who, the Ian Duncan Smiths out there. If you go to the doctor and he says, if you keep eating and drinking, at the state that you do, you will have heart problems and high blood pressure. Is that Project Fear?
No, it's not.
So why is when a trade expert such as yourself or others, Mr. BMW, Mr. Airbus, Mr. Bank of England, all these people whose jobs it is to make sure that things don't absolutely collapse, why, when they're giving out a warning, is that Project Fear? John's called from Mill Hill. Welcome to the show, John. What would you like to say?
Thanks, guys. I voted Remain mainly because I believe that we're better off together than apart. I've worked in Europe. I worked in Germany for a year, and I travel there a lot. I have sons that have done an Erasmus year over there, had a wonderful time. And as a professional photographer, I've been privy pre the vote and since the vote to lots and lots and lots of business meetings in all sectors of industry, and they're all genuinely worried about the outcome when we leave. And in fact, one that surprised me, which was the British-German Chamber of Commerce and Business over here, and they had a senior minister over from Germany, and he was visibly upset that we were leaving. He couldn't understand it. And one thing that was pointed out, it was in Wales, apparently, where someone was saying, well, what has the European Union ever done for us? And he was standing in a playground that had been built with European Union money. The whole thing's bizarre. I see that the Northeast, I can understand because it's been too London-centric, this country, which has led to a lot of this. But the Northeast, it's a bit like turkeys voting for Christmas.
Yeah, I can understand the frustration. John, thank you very much for your call, and I do appreciate it. Jason, so let's go back to the WTO that we were talking about. And you mentioned the article, the third paragraph of Article 50, that at the end of the day, we basically all these things cease to exist.
All of them. All the agreed. So the medicals agency, the Euratom, all of that kind of, the EASA, which keeps the planes flying. But people like Ian Duncan Smith in the Telegraph say, well, hey, there's no problem here. And again, with the WTO, if we fall into WTO, we just copy and paste all the agreements that we had before into that. So where's the problem with that? A lot of them are not governed by the WTO, the World Trade Organization. They're a rules-based organization. The UK has been members of the WTO since 1948, when we helped write GATT, the Global Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, around the world. Now, part of the WTO process is, if you don't have a free trade agreement with another country, and you're not a member of a trade bloc, as we are at the moment, then you will be treated as a third country.
Yeah.
Now, what that means is you get to set your import tariffs on all the goods that are coming into the UK, and the Brexiteers are now saying, oh, well, let's have it at zero. We'll just have all cheap stuff.
That's what you say, Andre, isn't it?
100%.
You want everything just a zero.
Yeah, and funnily enough, I think we chatted about this a bit when we went off air last time. As far as I'm concerned, a trade tariff is a tax on British consumers, because obviously if my phone is 4% more expensive because it's come from China, it's me that pays that 4%. And I literally see no reason why we should slap that tax on. Now, funnily enough...
Wait, because that's a good point. Let Jason come back on that.
It is. We can set the zero import tariffs, but there are 334,000 companies, British companies, in the United Kingdom that export to the European Union.
Sure.
Right. Now, we can control our own import tariffs,
That's right.
but we cannot control what the other 163 members of the World Trade Organization, what they're going to set as treating us as a third country, because they've already got them set. They're called common external tariff regimes.
Yes.
And what that means is other countries that we currently sell to around the world will be forced to apply the highest possible tariffs on everything that they buy from the United Kingdom. So not only will the price go up from anything from 4% for a private aircraft bought from Bombardier in Northern Ireland, up to 30 or 40% if you want to export cheddar cheese to North America, Japan, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, any of 60 countries where the European Union currently have trade arrangements and trade agreements with. Because we're not just talking about 27 European Union countries.
Sure.
We're talking about another 60 around the world. Between them all, they take over 90% of all our goods and products and services that we make in the UK go out of the country. All of that is gone. All of those agreements are gone.
But that isn't an argument necessarily against what I'm calling UTD, unilateral trade tariff disarmament. I mean, my reason for saying that is there have been countries historically around the world that have just gone, look, we know the world is full of tariffs, we know the world is full of protectionist regimes, we know there are people who will put on regulations to our goods, but we just think that we personally should be a beacon for free trade, and that will infect the rest of the world.
Can you name one?
Yeah, Hong Kong.
Hong Kong. Okay.
Yeah, so when Hong Kong was essentially a very poor port when the British first took over, we effectively abolished all tariffs and most of the regulations on business, and of course it suddenly exploded. Now, of course, your argument is, well, hang on, if that's not reciprocated by other countries, then that's inherently damaging, but the Hong Kong example says that that's not right.
How many cars are we going to sell to Hong Kong?
No, I'm saying that Hong Kong itself built itself on this unilateral trade.
So we can do what I think what you're saying, Andre, is we can do what Hong Kong did.
Yes.
Now, I've been to Hong Kong. I represented the government, the special administrative regional government there in a case. I know what it's like. There's not a great deal of industry and manufacturing in that particular country. In the UK, over 700,000 people work in the UK automotive sector. 77% of cars that are built in the UK are exported out of the country. We build cars for the European Union in the UK. Yes, we can set a zero import tariff, but the rest of the world cannot set zero import tariffs back on themselves. The whole point of getting rid of all the tariffs, like a single market, for example, the largest single market on the planet, which represents more than a third of all global trade, is the European Union. And that's exactly what we've been doing. We've been getting rid of tariffs across the board. That's the whole point of making trade easier. The United Kingdom will be the first country that's ever existed on the history of the planet to start saying, we've got the best deal it's possible to get. We want to negotiate a worse trade deal with all of our trade partners in the world.
But can I ask this question? This is a question I'm genuinely interested in.
As opposed to all the other ones that you just say to wind us all up. Yeah.
So firstly, here's my question. Is the EU bad at doing trade deals? So often you hear, and certainly in that Brexit, the movie, they said that if you want a free trade deal, the EU is one of the worst places in the world to live. And I suppose from my point of view, so as you know, I'm a constitutional conservative. I believe in leaving whatever the EU's policies are. But I think it is interesting that I fear that the EU is a protectionist bloc. That is to say that clearly the internal market's a good thing. I don't think there's many British people who disagree with that. But is there a risk that we are walling ourselves off by being in Europe? And are they bad at doing trade deals?
They are one of the best people in the world to be doing trade deals. They've just done Canada a couple of years ago. They take a long time. Because, as I said, Japan more recently. Yeah. And within the EU 27 and the further 60 countries around the world, there's 34 different trade agreements. Some of them are with trade blocs, some of them are with individual countries. So we've got 87 different countries we can trade with now, with virtually no tariffs, very few customs and tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers. They are getting rid of them piece by piece, country by country, block by block around the world. This isn't something you can do overnight. But I want to return to all those people's jobs in the UK who are building goods and building products for export around the world. If you're sitting in Brazil, and you're one of the 60 countries we deal with today, if you're sitting in Brazil, Alexis, and you are buying, I don't know, tables from the UK for selling in your country, if the price of that table is increased by 28% post-Brexit, and you've got to prepare a whole stack of paperwork in order to be able to import it back into your home country, why would you continue buying from that UK manufacturer when you can buy it 28% cheaper around the corner in the country somewhere else?
There's a question, because we've had a lot of questions come in via Twitter, and keep them coming. I will try and get through as many of them as we can. But it's a question that relates to that from Just Ezekiel. He says, out of interest, would the raw material costs and costs of imported goods and costs of business of complying with endless EU red tape be significantly lower once we get onto WTO rules?
In terms of the costs, who knows? It's going to be a lot more difficult. And what I would suggest is have a look at the UK government Department of International Trade guidance for exporting outside the EU today.
There's a PDF on that online, isn't there?
There's about 50 PDFs and links through from that page out. The amount of paperwork that's involved for exporting to a country where we don't have an agreement at the moment, i.e. under WTO, is absolutely horrendous. Now, 334,000 small to medium-sized enterprises in the UK do not have the expertise within them today because they've never needed it to be able to complete all that customs paperwork and everything else. They've never needed to do it before. It's incredibly costly.
So the likelihood is you're going to have to do more red tape rather than less. Right, keep your questions coming in. Keep your calls coming in. 0344 499 1000 is the number that you need. You could text a question in to 87222. Just type the word talk followed by your message. We're going to be straight back after this.
Talk Radio, the 21st century dream team of dialogue, debate and discourse.
Talk Radio, give it some lift.
Buying a new car can be a haunting experience. Is there enough room for the little monsters? Will it be devilishly expensive to run? Will I be haunted by the price? Well, from only $9,995, the all-new Dacia Duster gives you the freedom to get what you want with none of the ghoulies. Dacia, you do the maths. Participating dealers only.
Your time is now, and every second counts. Register with the Open University today, and you'll soon see the difference. Pick up that pay rise before picking up your degree. Get that promotion before getting to graduation. Be your future self sooner with our career-boosting courses. Visit openuniversity.co.uk before time runs out. Registration closes the 13th of September. The Open University. What's stopping you?
At Subway, we don't do tiny. Introducing the new Subway Signature Loaded Wraps. Irresistibly smoky Chipotle Southwest Steak and Cheese. Juicy rotisserie-style Chicken Caesar. And meaty turkey bacon and guacamole. Big wraps, big flavour. Bigger is better.
Subway, make it what you want. T's and C's apply. See in store for details.
Talk Radio Traffic and Travel.
In Worcestershire on M5 northbound. It's very slow at the moment between junction 5 for Droitwich and junction 4A for the M42 after an earlier accident. Looking at Warwickshire on the M6 northbound, there's been a breakdown between junction 3 for Nuneaton and junction 7 for the M42 at Coles Hill. One lane is closed. And in Manchester on the M66 northbound, there's been a breakdown at junction 2 for Bury. One lane is closed on the entry slip road, although traffic does seem to be coping pretty well in the area. I'm Susie McFadden.
Table service at McDonald's. This is nice. Just order your food and they bring it over. Gives me a little quality time with the kids. Listen to them, arguing over nothing.
That's enough. Karen's right. There is no such thing as a troll, but the Loch Ness Monster is definitely real.
Told ya.
Probably.
A moment to hone your umpiring skills. Brought to you by Table Service. McDonald's. Good times made easier. Selected restaurants only. Find your nearest at mcdonalds.co.uk.
Get something for the weekend with Alexis Conrad. The Saturday Show on Talk Radio. We'll get you talking.
Welcome back to the show with me, Alexis Conran, here on Talk Radio. With me, I have Andre Walker and Jason Hunter, who is our trade expert, who's going to try and solve a lot of the questions that both Andre and I have, and the listeners. There's a lot of questions coming in, and I'm going to try and get to as many of them as I can. Obi says on Twitter, does Andre realise that the Hong Kong situation he's talking about was before we had airplanes, computers, lightning-fast internet connections, cars, trucks, etc., etc., etc.? We cannot go back to that. He's capitalised the last bit, so I think you riled someone up there.
It remains a trading nation. It was a trading nation before. That's look. I mean,
but not a manufacturing nation.
Yeah, but my point is simply this. You know, all these people who go on and on and on about how we shouldn't have any tariffs appear to be the people that love tariffs. We're going, we must have tariffs on this, we must have tariffs on that, and then they go, oh well, we don't want tariffs. I think there is a schizophrenia embedded deep in the heart of every Remainiac.
But then I don't remember saying I like tariffs. What I said was I like being a member of the largest single trade bloc on the planet.
Yes.
With another 60 countries around the world where we're actually lowering tariffs.
By the way, the largest single trade bloc on the planet is the planet, and we do not want to wall ourselves off from that.
How do you? I mean, you love railing against kind of like, oh, that's not true, Andre. The Department of Trade put out a nice little video with Liam Fox saying that our largest trading partner is America,
which isn't true.
That's just not true.
No, that's not true.
Our largest single.
That's not true because they think that the United States of Europe is not a country.
Oh,
but of course
quiet,
the EU
Andre.
is a country. If you were to say what is the biggest country we trade with, then I say that's the European Union. They say the EU's not a country, therefore it's America.
Do you know what? I'm not going to waste Jason's time by dealing with rubbish like that.
I appreciate that.
We can deal with at some other point. But Jason, to go back to our largest trading partner is
the European Union.
The European Union.
Yeah, or the 27 countries of the European Union.
So why is the Department of International Trade telling us that it's the US?
Because they don't know what they're doing. Our parliamentarians, this is really embarrassing for us as a nation. Our parliamentarians who are running around the country, waving pieces of paper around, going, it's all going to be fine, don't worry about it. They do not know what they are doing. I don't know how many of our representatives, elected representatives in our sovereign parliament have actually read Article 50. I don't know how many of them have actually read...
a lot of them have read it, but I don't think a lot of them understand it.
It's really... all our treaties cease. It's not hard to understand.
So in your mind, I've got to get our next guest on, but in your mind... it's in black and white. Basically, we need to drop out in order to negotiate our way back in.
On worse terms.
Well, yeah, and Brexiteers will argue that actually they're better terms, but, that's up there to be argued with. Let's get our next guest on, because it felt unfair to leave Andre to battle all this by himself, and he has to resort to things like Europe is a country, which is not only factually incorrect, but it's just silly, Andre. Right, let's say hello to Jordan Ryan, Deputy Editor at Brexit Central. Welcome to the show, Jordan.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on. So I take it, I often sort of have a look at Brexit Central just because I fancy seeing what the other side of the argument is. Problem is, every time I'd read an article, especially when it comes to WTO and no deal, then I do a little bit of research on what's in the article, and very often than not, I find that there's bits missing, and also some bits that are a little bit misleading. Is there people fact-checking stuff that goes up on Brexit Central?
I think you'd have to sort of provide me examples. I think it's a bit of an unfair thing to bounce me into without actually telling me what you think is factually incorrect.
Okay, there was recently a WTO article which sort of was I don't want to say a little bit misleading, but there was bits missing from it. But look, it's unfair. It's unfair if I hit you with that. But Brexit Central, it's fair to say you guys are very happy and would be thrilled to see the UK drop out of the negotiations with a no deal into WTO rules. Tell me why you're not as worried as someone like me. I'm a little bit worried that we're going to lose all those deals with Euratom, the isotopes that we need for cancer screenings, X-rays. I'm worried about the planes. We're going to talk about this with Andre, because Andre thinks it's ludicrous to be worried about planes not taking off because we will drop out of the EASA. But at Brexit Central, you seem to be quite optimistic about a no-deal WTO rules scenario.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, I think the first thing to sort of understand here is that we've had all this before in the referendum, all this Project Fear, planes won't fly, we'll run out of food. And, I'm really enjoying the ones at the minute that we're going to have super gonorrhea and martial law. These ones are fantastic.
I haven't seen those, but just one thing that you said there, Jordan. You're saying that, we're going to run out of food. Why is the government stockpiling food and medicines?
Well, that's not what they're actually saying, and I think those...
I think that is exactly what they're saying. So if they're not worried about running out of food and medicines, why are they stockpiling them?
You'd have to ask the government. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not a government.
All right, let's move on.
The point I was trying to make was that we've had all this in the referendum, and a lot of the things that came from the Treasury, the dangers of no deal, as it were, none of it happened. We didn't have this recession. Let's not forget, 7 out of 10 economists during the referendum said they anticipated an instant recession because of the Leave vote. Never happened. There wasn't these mad job losses. The sky didn't fall in. We've not had World War III yet. And it's kind of picked up again. And I was always somebody who believed that the economic argument for leaving the European Union was quite balanced.
Right, but you say none of the Armageddon happened, but do you not think that that's because there were necessary steps taken at the time to prevent it from doing so? And I'm going to hand over to Jason here, because I think he wants to come in on that.
Yeah, hi, Jordan. You say it not happened. Mark Carney put billions and billions of pounds into the economy the day immediately after the referendum. The Bank of England then gave permission for all the UK major banks to begin lending their emergency reserves. The clue's in the name, emergency reserves. They were given permission to lend them out. That's astounding. If you look at the foreign direct investment into the United Kingdom, there's been a swing away from the UK of £300 billion in the last 2 years since the referendum. There's 185,000 fewer jobs created in the United Kingdom as a result of the referendum. That converts into a £30 billion loss in taxes to HM Treasury just in the last 2 years since the referendum. Now, I'm not making these figures up. You can go and check them out for yourself. It's all fact-checkable because facts matter. Have a look on the Department of International Trade website. Look at the number of jobs that are created by foreign direct investment. A lot of Brexiteers will say, Armageddon didn't happen. It's happening. It's death by 1,000 cuts. It's just not getting shot in the head.
I actually kind of understand the argument a little bit, but my point is what I didn't get to make before, was the decision to leave the European Union wasn't an economic one. It was a political one. The whole economic argument was finely balanced. We could do well inside the European Union. We could do well outside. We could...
Nobody said that. Nobody said that.
The only people who've said we could do well outside the European Union was Mr. Patrick Minford, I believe, which was, I think they've now changed their name to Economists for Free Trade.
But Alexis, can I throw this in and come to my colleague? I don't know Jordan Ryan, but I have to say I agree with everything he's saying. As you may not.
See that flying horse over there?
Look, always remember something. When people complain about experts and when people complain about these studies and facts, we are talking about the people who said not joining the euro would cost 2 million jobs.
No, we're not.
All the same organisations.
No, we're not.
All these experts. And so fundamentally, these people, or at least this campaign to remain in the EU, has form on, I don't know whether they're lying, I don't know whether their statistics are wrong, but that is... but here is my point that I think is extremely important. Look, firstly, is there going to be a Brexit famine, which we've been warned about? Is civilian aviation going to cease to take place? Is the NHS going to close down? The reason people are calling it Project Fear is because manifestly none of those things are going to happen. Nobody can name me a country that, when it became independent, abolished civilian aviation as a result.
Let me ask a question, Andre, if I may. What evidence are you basing that on?
Well, that there'll be no Brexit famine. But hang on a second. It's incumbent on you to prove that something will happen, not for me to prove it won't happen.
Right.
So firstly, explain why civilian aviation will not take place.
Get your Google up again, and search for EU preparedness notices.
Okay, so no, but what I asked you was, can you name a country where they had to abolish civilian aviation as a result of becoming independent?
Well, we are an independent sovereign state today.
Let's
not talk about independence. What we're talking about doing is leaving the European Union and all our associated agreements with them and with another 60 countries around the world.
Will planes fly the day after Brexit?
Not into the UK. If we have a no-deal Brexit...
So there will be no planes into the UK?
Let me explain why.
I can hear Jordan
laughing.
It's
illegal, by the way, it's illegal to offer somebody a bet on a UK radio station, but if it were not illegal...
Okay, you would know that. But Jordan, are you with Andre on this one? You think that this whole planes EASA membership is, if we drop out without a deal, that planes may risk be grounded? You think that's as laughable as Andre does, do you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are some sort of technical aspects where, technically, if you're not part of this system or that system, that there can be disruptions and things like this. But I think fundamentally, if that ever came to the precipice, if we're on March 28th and this is a possibility, do you not think that the bosses of all of the plane companies across the world are going to go to their leaders and say, look, we need to sort this out? Even slight delays of 15, 20 minutes cost airlines millions of pounds. They're not going to want to risk a single day of not flying. So this is something that political pragmatism, let's not forget, both sides are kind of swinging their bits at each other at the minute, trying to, work out whose is bigger. And when push comes to shove, the pragmatism will, people will come to a pragmatic solution to these kind of issues.
Yeah, but Jordan, you say that, but you Google the EU preparedness notices. We're not just talking about the EASA, the European Aviation Safety Agency. We're talking about the Single Skies Agreement. Now, that means as at 11:01 p.m. on the 29th of March next year, our username and our login between the UK air traffic control systems and the European Union's air traffic control systems get cancelled. If we have no deal, we have no login. Our air traffic control cannot communicate with other EU airports and planes. We also lose the Open Skies Agreement, which is an agreement between the United States of America to allow their planes to fly in and out of the European Union.
Pristina Airport is still legally part of Serbia, yet the Kosovan government still manages to land planes there. How does it do it?
Through agreements. Now, we will be able to eventually negotiate our way back into all of these things, but a no-deal Brexit is what we're talking about. A no-deal Brexit is what Jordan wants and what you want.
Yes, Jordan. There's a misunderstanding here about, I think, what no deal is, and this is something that we at Brexit Central are going to sort of push over the next few months about what it would actually mean, because no deal doesn't have to mean walking away and
yes, it does.
Overnight.
Yes, it does.
These kind of agreements, like the Open Skies Agreement, there is no way. We can't make bets, but I would make you a bet that is not going to happen. Just like all the things.
Because there will be an agreement, though, Jordan. Because there has to be an agreement. And by the way, if we stay in things like the EASA or Euratom, then you have to agree. If you're in an agreement with anybody, in my limited experience, Jordan, feel free to correct me here, and Jason as well. If you're in an agreement with anybody, you have to agree on whom actually takes the final decision. Who's got jurisdiction over this agreement? And both with Euratom and the EASA, it's the European Courts of Justice, which ardent Brexiteers have sworn they will never, ever, ever be part of. So how will we find an agreement?
Was that a question for me?
Yeah, feel free to get in here.
Well, I think before any of this comes to this, I think that there will be something in line which solves this, because if you just look at it politically, it's not going to happen. Can you imagine the damage it would do to Spain if British tourists couldn't go out there? Can you imagine the damage it would do? Just, this whole idea that...
So you're basically saying you think that something will happen. I don't want to call it unicorns, but something will happen, just like the Irish border somehow is going to be sorted.
The only people talking about building the Irish border are the European Union.
Absolutely, they are.
So I thought the Prime Minister was completely wrong when she says it's our duty to deal with this problem. Look, smuggling's endemic at the Irish border anyway. We don't care. And the reason
you don't care?
No, we don't care, and I'll tell you why.
Hang on, who are you speaking for? Who's we?
So when we remove the physical infrastructure at the border, we knew full well that things like tobacco and petrol would be smuggled, and that would be a widespread problem. The issue is with Northern Ireland, the biggest cost to the United Kingdom would be of the security infrastructure of Northern Ireland effectively going back to war with itself. Therefore, if the cost of the Irish of not having an Irish border is that smuggling's endemic but there is no war, everybody knows that the British would suck that up.
If you've got frictionless free trade with no... I mean, literally moving things from France to Germany or from Austria to Slovakia... That's not smuggling. That's called free trade. That's what we have.
But you know that there are different taxation levels on things like petrol. And in fact, the petrol smuggling, everybody knows, is a huge issue at the Northern Irish border. But the point is, because actually this is a relatively small territory, the fact that there is widespread petrol smuggling, actually in terms of tax take, is not a major problem for the United Kingdom. So I merely make the point that if we had a hard border there now, we would prevent smuggling that takes place now. Why have we not built it? The reason is because we don't care.
We've now made it illegal as well. If you look at the EU Withdrawal Act that just received royal assent last month in July,
that's right.
Section 10.2b makes it illegal for the UK to put any checks, controls or measures on the Northern Irish border.
And am I right in thinking, Jason, that if we drop into WTO, we have to have a border in Ireland? The WTO will insist that we have a border in Ireland.
The WTO will. If we don't have one, then it just means that we're treated as a third country, which means everything we sell... Because I'm more concerned about exports, because there are millions and millions and millions of UK jobs that depend on our exports out. And right now, we can export freely and very, very economically and efficiently. When we leave, we make it more complex, more expensive for our customers to even buy from us. But I want to go back to what Jordan was just saying. His hopes and wishes, it'll be fine. And Andre saying, they're not going to shut down the planes. Let me tell you exactly the EU's position on this. Because we've invoked Article 50 and all our agreements cease, the withdrawal of the United Kingdom and EU rules on all of the preparedness papers say specifically the UK submitted its notification of intention to leave. As of the 29th at midnight Central European time, the withdrawal date, the United Kingdom will become a third country, and all union primary and secondary law will cease to apply to the United Kingdom. All of the EU preparedness notices across the board say exactly that. They all begin the same way.
But both Jordan and Andre believe that is not going to happen. Jordan?
Sorry, I didn't catch that bit.
Well, everybody's saying that on midnight or whatever, I think it's 1 minute past 11 in March 2019, all these agreements will cease to exist. And if they cease to exist, then we can't fly planes, we can't import isotopes. Andre's shaking his head. You've told me something is going to happen to prevent that. Is it out of, is it unreasonable for someone like me, a Remainer, to ask what is going to happen? Somebody explain it to me, Andre.
What is going to happen? By the way, it's 1 minute past 11, because even on withdrawal dates, we can't agree between us and the European Union. It's midnight in Brussels and 11 o'clock for us.
Well, that's where the seat of the European government sits, so I think it's reasonable.
I'm making this a flippant comment. Look, the slight problem here is that people who love the European Union, I've made this point before, are inherently statist. And so they turn around and they say, what is the state going to do to resolve all these problems for businesses? Somebody like me turns around and says, look, we don't want the state involved. And when you say, look, all of these rules that the European Union has in place will disappear, what are you going to do to countenance that? Well, my answer is nothing, because I do not wish those rules to exist. I do not.
So you don't want any rules for EASA. So aviation rules. Let's do without them.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. I think we can locally regulate it, and I think if the EU are not happy with landing planes in Britain as they do in America, Canada, New Zealand,
through open skies agreements.
Open skies agreement.
If they're not happy to do that, then the planes will not fly. But as I said to you a second ago, look, I can't make a bet on air, but if I could make a bet, I'd bet you £1,000 that the planes will still be flying because
we will do an agreement.
But that doesn't mean effectively adopting all the EU's rules, because you've conflated two things. Do we have a bilateral agreement with the EU, or do we take all their rules and regulations? When you say to me, Andre, what are you going to do about the fact all the EU's regulations cease the day we leave? Jump for joy, open a bottle of champagne and celebrate. I do not wish to be in the European Union.
Yeah, Andre, I get that you feel that, but the haulage industry had a session this week with Secretary of State for Transport, our friend Chris Grayling.
He's brilliant, isn't he?
Great?
I love him.
Isn't he great? The truck drivers said, you do realise that the UK truck drivers are allowed to cross on ferries and deliver exported goods from the UK that have been made by hard-working Brits into the European Union because their licences are valid.
Yes.
Their driving licences will not be recognised at 11:01 p.m. on Friday.
I've got a friend with a Pakistani driving licence that's recognised in the UK. I mean, Pakistan's not part of the EU.
Because we've got bilateral agreements with over 60 countries around the world.
So you just have a bilateral agreement with the EU?
Fine, then we'll start that.
Well, let's do that.
At 11:02, we can begin that. But if you're a truck driver sitting on the ferry and you've driven on and you're not allowed to drive off.
Okay, so now we're on to there will be no British trucks allowed in the European Union after Brexit.
Without accreditation.
Once again, I can't bet.
Okay, I'm going to have to, because we've got to go to a break. Jordan Ryan, thank you very much for joining us, Deputy Editor of Brexit Central. We're going to take a little break. We've got inundated with calls. There's a lot of calls. I'm going to get to your calls next. There is room for more calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number that you need. You could tweet us at Talk Radio. I've got your questions. I'm going to be asking them to Jason. If you have any questions, give us a call right here. 0344 499 1000. That is the number you need.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
A new kind of talk radio. We'll get you talking.
Hey, Philip Schofield here. WeBuyAnyCar.com reckon you could find out what your car's worth in under 60 seconds. I know, I didn't believe it myself, so I timed it. And it's true. It actually took me only 53 seconds. Not that it's a race. So if you want to find out how much your car's worth, or just want to beat my time, enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com. Think I might give it another go. 49. Get in.
Admin fee may apply. For more information, see WeBuyAnyCar.com/info.
Bladder weakness is nothing to be embarrassed about. It affects 1 in 4 men aged 40 and over. It can stop you from attending live sports matches or taking part, which just isn't cricket. Tenamen is the protective absorbent solution which keeps urine leakage under control, leaving you to get on with doing all the things in life you like doing, without the fear of drips and dribbles. For helpful advice and a free no-obligation sample pack, visit tenor.co.uk/men today. Tenamen. Discreet protection. Keep control.
Penalties to playoffs, batsmen to bowlers, hackers to hookers. How well do you know your sports? Play the amazing new live trivia game, Q Live. Just download the free app and get ready for a 6 p.m. kickoff every Sunday with our Q Live sport game. Score 12 questions correctly to take the title and win a grand. Enter the code SPORT and get a free life. Q Live, the game that stops the nation.
Talk Radio, traffic and travel.
In Staffordshire on the M54 westbound, there's been an accident at Junction 1 for Wolverhampton. The main carriageway is currently closed. Traffic is being diverted down and underneath the carriageway via the exit and entry slip roads. In Derby on the A52, the Pentagon, it's closed in both directions at the Sir Frank Whittle Road, Pentagon Island. That's because of an accident. And in Peterborough, the A15 northbound, there's been a lorry fire from the River Nene to the Rivergate roundabout. It's closed there at the moment and it's very slow on approach. I'm Susie McFadden.
At QuickFit, we're proud to be the UK's go-to MOT tester. Last year, we did over 700,000. So if your MOT is due, then we're here to help. Our Our specialist technicians will carry out the test at a time and date that suits you. Drop off your car or wait with free hot drinks and Wi-Fi. We've got over 500 MOT centres across the UK and there's slots available to book right now. Just head down to your local QuickFit today or visit quickfit.com to book online and drive away happy.
He's the righteous reporter who's got his finger on the pulse of UK politics.
They should be scrutinised more closely.
The Week with John Nicholson on Talk Radio. Tomorrow afternoon from 4.
Join the stout speaker with the Triple Lock Manifesto to bring you the week's big stories from Westminster, as I said to Tony.
Journeying across the week's political landscape, debating all the pressing issues.
I'll be presiding over fast-paced political debate.
From budget cuts to Brexit, or ballots to backbenchers. All from his heavily reinforced radio dispatch box.
Read my lips.
It's a 3-line whip to listen to The Week with John Nicholson.
Toying the party line. Tomorrow afternoon from 4
on Talk Radio. Entertaining debates, big-name guests and outspoken opinions. The Saturday Show with Alexis Conrad on Talk Radio. We'll get you talking.
Welcome back to the show with me, Alexis Conran, here on Talk Radio. I am joined by Jason Hunter, trader expert, and also Andre Walker, winding up expert, I would say, of me.
Get out of it.
I'm going to try and get through as many of your tweets as I can. It would appear that Jordan of Brexit Central has no answers and now been dropped from the call. We didn't drop him from the call, but we only had limited amount of time because we've got other callers to come in. Angel says government is deluded. Even Jezza knows we need a customs union. Let's not go into Jeremy Corbyn because nobody knows what's in his mind. There was Amu says if Andre had a business in some third world country, let's say in Southeast Asia, it might be a genius idea for him. But if he lives off the British manufacturing industry in any way, then it appears he lacks the most basic economic insight. Andre,
get out of it.
Deborah says, how can foreign businesses place future orders with our companies if they don't know what tariffs will apply or how much products will cost? I think
that is a fair point, by the way. I think one of the big problems, and Nigel Farage said this in his interview with Jeremy Kyle, whatever else we think, I think we can all agree that the instability that exists at the moment is a problem, and the British government, in truth, is making that instability worse.
Okay, well, let's get David on the line. David, welcome to the show. David from Nottingham, what do you want to say?
I'd like to say I voted to remain, but we had a referendum and the people's vote is not being respected.
Well, okay, I appreciate that. It's very big of you to say that, but we are all sort of saying that a people made up their mind and that is final and irreversible. We've got to remember that unlike general election every 5 years with a fixed term parliament, you can have another say. I would maintain that at the time, certainly I will put my hand up. I've voted Remain. I didn't really understand what I was voting for. Jason might have understood what he was voting for because he knows about trade, but I had no idea about tariffs, about WTO, and the landscape has changed. Plus the fact, 3 other things to put in there. One of the side has been found by the Electoral Commission to have cheated. Whether that played a big enough part in the referendum result, we do not know, but it's a fact. And the other bit is that a lot of the promises that we were given have simply not materialised. So,
well, we should be used to that. I know governments always make promises and never deliver on them.
Okay, but do you...
but there's another thing. I mean, remember when Ireland had their referendum, and then we just kept having more referendums until they got the answer that they wanted. So if your opinion, it reminds me of that song by the Eagles, the Hotel California. Like, you can check out any time you like, but you can't ever leave.
You see,
that seems to, you can't ever leave Europe. That seems to be the situation here. And why George Soros and Blair's putting millions into these referendum campaign, I don't even know, because not even British citizen. Well,
okay, David, but let's not open that can of worms. And I'm a little bit suspicious that for a Remainer you've gone there, because we could also talk about Robert Mercer and Andre's mate Steve Bannon.
Robert. I have to correct you. I have to correct you. And I think it's important. I think it's important because Bob Mercer's a friend of mine. It's important to point out that while Soros pumps money into liberal organisations in Europe, Mercer has never pumped anything in. The only thing Mercer's ever done is invested in Breitbart, which is a profitable news
Cambridge
company.
Analytica? His money never went into Cambridge Analytica.
But that is a business. That is a profit-making business.
Just to answer the question.
Yeah, go on.
Here, I mean, 2 years ago, my friend, I sat down with a bunch of blokes and we all agreed that we're going to have a reunion in 2018 in a pub called the Baker's Arms.
Did you have a referendum on it?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. We all sat down, we voted on which pub we were going to go to. We all sat down, we voted on which pub we were going to go to.
And you did what you said?
Yeah, we did. 2 years later.
Well, we had a vote, and now we're trying to have another one because we didn't like the outcome of it.
Do you want to listen to Jason, David?
Guess what's happened, David?
Go on.
In 2018, we got to the Baker's Arms, and when we stood outside, we're about to go in, the whole building's burning down in flames. Some of the people in that group said, oh, no, we decided that we're going into the Baker's Arms in 2018, so we've got to go in anyway. But some of us were smart enough to say, do you know what? The building's burning down. It's probably not a good idea for us to keep going in there. Let's find an alternative pub to go to.
But to extend the analogy, that would be one group burning the building down, setting fire to it themselves in order to stop people being there.
David?
Yes?
Well, what do you have to say to that from Jason? The circumstances have changed, therefore, perhaps we should also have the chance to change our minds.
No, circumstances haven't changed. All that's changed is loads of money going into the campaign to have another referendum, because Europe doesn't want us to leave. Like I say, it's like the Hotel California.
Okay.
And we're not on about going into a burning building, are we? We're on about leaving Europe.
Thanks for your call, David. If you're a Remainer, then I am a pig that is flying. Right. But thank you very much for your call. I didn't quite get the point. I mean, Andre, you think that even though circumstances have changed, we shouldn't really even contemplate changing our minds.
Here is something that I think is going to potentially enrage you. But look, the division that exists in our society today is not because of Brexit, it's because of membership of the European Union. We have been pushed into being a member of the European Union. There should have been a vote on the Lisbon Treaty. Do you know what? They shouldn't have had the Lisbon Treaty. I believe we probably would still be in the EU if the Lisbon Treaty had not taken place. Okay. Remember what we're talking about here. It's not entering a burning building. It's returning to the status quo.
Okay, let's take a call from Sean. Sean from Gosport. Welcome to the show, Sean. What do you want to say?
Good afternoon. How are you?
Very good. You've got a couple of minutes, so I would get straight to the point.
Okay, straight to the point then. A lot of talk about the Irish border is complete nonsense. Basically, there's no legal precedent on record anywhere for the European Union enforcing a hard border between a current member state and a former member state, and there's also no legal precedent for the World Trade Organisation doing this either. And on the Nigel Farage situation, I used to be a huge fan of his, a supporter. I voted for him. He's now coming out too late, and as far as I'm concerned, the gate's been open and the horse is bolting with Theresa May's deal, and unless there's a leadership change, we're just going to have to suck it up.
Okay, Jason?
Talking about the border in Northern Ireland, as a member of the World Trade Organization, if we're trading on WTO terms, one of the things you have to be able to do is to be able to measure the volume and the value of goods that cross your borders, coming in and going out. You know, otherwise, who will know what how much of the quota has been used up so far? How will you know what tariffs to apply if you're not measuring, checking, and controlling the goods coming in and out of your country? How will you do that?
Okay, you're a trade expert. Have you got legal precedent to hand to prove that there can be a legal border enforced between a former and current European Union member state?
There is no precedent because nobody's ever left the European Union.
That's not correct. Algeria has left the European Union.
They left France, was it? And Greenland, Denmark.
But yeah, there are examples of people leaving.
And there are borders there.
By the way, I don't know where the Algeria point gets us. I just thought I'd throw it in.
Exactly. As ever, disturbing. But Sean, Sean, you're obsessed with a legal precedent. Do you not find the answer that... Because I'm sorry, maybe you're going to call me biased, but I thought the answer that Jason gave you was a pretty simple and easy to understand one. You have to have, when you have tariffs and when you have trade with the country, you have to measure what goes in and what comes out. And also, let's not forget that immigration was one of the big things that people voted for. Why would we want, the whole, Nigel Farage was on Jeremy Kyle this morning going, control of our borders, passports, fish. Well, we want control of our borders, but we're happy to leave 300 miles worth of borders unchecked.
Well, if you're going to go down that line, then that's fair enough. But you need to provide legal precedent for it, which means there needs to be case law to back it. A member state, like, for example, like the European Union, couldn't turn round to the Republic of Ireland and say, right, we're going to make you put a border up. And don't forget, there's over 200 crossings between Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, and that's just the roads. So where are the European Union's numbers for this? Your trade expert there talks about all these tariffs and things. Well, so be it. But give me the numbers, give me the legal precedent for it, and I might well change my mind on it. But at the moment, all I can see is rhetoric and nonsense around it.
Okay, Sean, thank you for your call. I'm only cutting you off because I need to go to the news, but I don't think we need legal precedents when you have to have trade and you have to have a border. But I kind of understand Sean's point, but I understand his frustration. Don't go anywhere. Jason's still with us for the next half hour after the news. We've got plenty more of your calls to come. If you've got any questions, give us a call here. Do you agree with Andrew? Do you agree with Jason? 0344 499 1000 is the number you need, or you could tweet us at Talk Radio.
Talk Radio, 24-hour radio debate and entertainment.
Talk Radio.
We'll get you talking.
Through to the last quarter of the lap. Crutchlow has the advantage. Ferocious hitting from Williams. Warrington is going after him now. And then Ronaldo!
MotoGP, WTA, Championship Boxing, exclusive UEFA Champions League, plus loads more. Take them all on with BT Sport. Be there, BT.
Since our first car hit the road in 1898, Renault has always used the latest innovations to make driving more enjoyable. And for our 120th anniversary, we're going to make things just that little bit easier by giving you £500 off the list price. Come and celebrate 120 years with us. Visit your nearest Renault dealer between the 17th and 27th of August for an extra £500 off your new Renault. Test drive and order by October 1st and register by December 31st, 2018. Excludes Zoe and Renault Sport. Retail customers only at participating dealers. T's and C's apply. Visit Renault.co.uk/drive.
Virgin Atlantic and Delta Airlines fly to an amazing 230 US destinations. That's so many you can discover everything America has to offer. And we mean everything. Like a buttery lobster roll in Boston, smearing your face in barbecue sauce in Austin, belting out a Broadway classic in New York City, and of course, strutting around in cowboy boots in, well, basically anywhere. Get the ultimate taste of the States with Virgin Atlantic and Delta. Go to virginatlantic.com today to start planning your American adventure. Terms and conditions apply.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
Talk Radio, on the hour news headlines.
From the Sky News Centre at 5. Autostrada per Italia, the company that maintains the bridge which collapsed in Genoa, killing 42 people, say their thoughts are with the families.
As a grandfather, as a father, as an Italian citizen and as an employee of the company, I am living through the immensity of their pain. I feel it. It's a terrible reality.
Earlier, a state funeral was held for 18 of the victims. Some relatives refused to attend out of anger at the government. Autostrada has pledged to build a replacement bridge within 8 months. Tony Blair's described former UN Secretary-General Kofi Annan as a true statesman following his death at the age of 80. Mr Annan clashed with Mr Blair over the 2003 invasion of Iraq, which he denounced as illegal, but they remained good friends. Nigel Farage is returning to frontline politics for what he calls a bid to scupper the government's Brexit blueprint. The former UKIP leader will take part in a battle bus tour by the Leave Means Leave group.
The fish rots from the head down. Theresa May just standing in front of TV cameras telling us Brexit means Brexit. We're taking back control of our laws, money and borders and doing the absolute opposite. You need somebody out there leading a country that believes in what they're doing.
Britain's expected to be battered by strong winds and rain from a tropical storm that could carry smoke from the Canadian and California wildfires. quiet. Storm Ernesto is due to arrive in the UK in around an hour's time. In sport, Tottenham's first Premier League game back at Wembley ended in a 3-1 victory against Fulham. Leicester had Jamie Vardy sent off as they beat Wolves 2-0. London rivals Chelsea and Arsenal kick off at Stamford Bridge later this hour. And England's cricketers are being made to struggle a bit by India on day one of the third test at Trent Bridge. A short while ago, the tourists had made their way to 241 for 4. That's the latest. I'm Tanya Snuggs.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
The Saturday Show with Alexis Conrad on Talk Radio. Entertaining debates, big-name guests and outspoken opinions. The Saturday Show with Alexis Conrad. Tackling the topics that everyone's talking about on Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome back to the show with me, Alexis Conrad, here on Talk Radio. With me I have trade expert Jason Hunter and wind-up merchant Andre Walker. No, he's my co-host and very valued co-host he is too, but he does wind me up. Now, we're going to get to your texts and tweets and calls. Thank you so much for all the engagement. Really appreciate it. And it gives us an opportunity to actually talk about the stuff that you want to find out and you care about. And it's all about, let's try and get to the facts. So Ben has called from Newbury. Ben, welcome to the show.
Hello, nice to speak to you all. I'm quite nervous, so excuse my nervous.
No, nothing to be nervous about. You're amongst friends here. What do you want to say?
Hello, I just wanted to ask a question to Andre Walker. I just wanted to know why is it considered to be scaremongering when we are discussing the natural legal consequences of Brexit and leaving the European Union? There's just like some examples, like the Consumer Rights Directive, which then the UK government implemented via the Consumer Contracts Regulations, which make businesses have to provide us with certain information. And these kind of rules and regulations go on. Like, for example, the Regulation 2016-2286, which governs the mobile roaming charges, which we benefit from as EU citizens. All of us do. What's going to happen to the Transfer of Undertakings Directive, which protects employees during a change of employer, or the Directive on Consumer Protection, which gives us automatic protection around the world where there's no British representation? What's going to happen to Directive 2005-36, which deals with professional qualification and mutual recognition? The EU's even prepared a notice on this, which says that we will be a country. Our qualifications, such as nurses, will not be recognised. We will not recognise nurses from other European countries, which the NHS relies on.
Okay. So give me a chance. So he's struggling. He's writing a lot of numbers down.
So Ben, first of all, let me say I spotted that you tweeted us, and I've tweeted back, "Welcome on board." So if you are first, and you didn't sound remotely nervous at all. Look, I think the first half of what you said, essentially, you listed a series of policies that you think the EU really likes, and one of the big arguments.
In relation to us as citizens, I'm not really going into the big trade questions.
No, sure. So I think my answer to that is it's very similar to the argument you often have about the social chapter, and I think from some people's perspective, it's brilliant that the EU brought in the social chapter because it brings what they say as protections for workers. My argument is, look, the UK government could have passed that social chapter themselves, and a lot of the laws that you listed, the UK government simply should have passed protection on consumer regulations and so on and so forth. The reason we didn't is because we believe that they're left-wing nonsense, and actually, fundamentally, Ben, let me just finish this, because fundamentally, I think part of the problem is when you're talking about a democratic deficit, the fact that these laws are being imposed on a country that wouldn't have voted for them themselves, that is classically the democratic. But the second half of your thing, which was about recognition abroad, clearly they've got to be bilateral arrangements, and clearly the British government is all over the place on this. I think everybody agrees that. But I think that fundamentally, that the fact we don't have those agreements in place yet does not mean the world falls apart the day after Brexit.
Oh, no, the world's definitely not going to fall apart, but these are natural legal consequences, and they are going to have their effects. I mean, talking about one of the biggest points raised during by the Leave campaign was the EU workers coming over here and undercutting workers. The EU just recently amended the Posting of Workers Directive, which now it removes the minimum.
Can I just quickly come back on? Can I just quickly come back on that? I think for me personally, one of the things I actually like about the European Union is free movement. I have no problem with a Polish guy undercutting a plumber that was previously charging $70,000 a year. I have no problem with that at all. I think the British government mishandled how we deal with new countries coming into the EU, but that doesn't make the policy overall bad policy.
But that begs the question then: who is to blame for our problems? The successive, not just the Conservative Labour. Well, even though it's just been them, Conservative and Labour government, successive
governments. I would have to say.
Well, no, let me take issue with that.
The EU? We need to talk about these.
Ben, I'm sorry.
These are natural legal consequences. I mean, I remember when I was at university studying EU law, and we even talked about Article 50. And it was like a mystical word. Like it's never been done.
Okay,
he's
Ben,
not that nervous, is he?
No, he's not nervous at all. Ben from Newbury, thank you for your call. Jason?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that. Whose fault is it about all this immigration? It's not successive governments, it's the media. Because the facts are 72% of what they call foreign people or immigrants in the UK are not even from the European Union. The actual statistical number of EU citizens living and working in the UK as a percentage of our population is just 4%. 4 in 100 people are EU citizens over here. And they contribute positively to HM Treasury. Mm-hmm. For every pound they take out, they put back in £1.34. We need these EU migrants in the UK supporting the NHS, and they're not here anymore. They're not coming anymore. They're not picking the fruit and vegetables and our food from our fields, and therefore it's rotting. Look at the National Farmers Union. They've got farmers coming to them every month saying, look, we are in trouble now. We're in trouble because we cannot get the food out of the fields.
And let's not forget the NHS. The nurses applying to come to the NHS has fallen off a cliff.
Off a cliff. There's 40,000
we've already got 40,000 vacancies. Exactly. Kieran is on the phone. Kieran, welcome to the show. What do you want to say?
Oh, hello, chaps. It's my first time calling you. Jason knows me. I'm one of the 3 blokes at the pub. So, hi, Jason. How you doing? Sorry I couldn't make it the other day.
Kieran, are you Kieran the van driver?
I am indeed.
Kieran! I know you, Kieran. I love Kieran the van driver. Kieran, for those of you who don't know, you should follow Kieran the van driver because he's actually on the ground driving a van for those very, very, recently they come into the news, that just-in-time deliveries. He's the guy who actually picks up the part from a factory in France and brings it to the factory in the UK just in time so the production line doesn't grind to a halt. So he's the guy who's going to be affected the most out of these rule changes. Kieran, welcome to the show. What do you want to ask Andre?
Right. I'll give you an example of a job I've done this week. I went out on a same-day delivery to Luxembourg and back on Tuesday.
Yep.
My vans have been to no fewer than 10 countries in the last 8 or 9 days on express transport deliveries. I've got regular contracts to Paris and Brussels every week. Now, after Brexit, when we leave the customs union, when Dover and Folkestone effectively erect a hard border to clear customs, I want to ask Andre how he thinks 4.2 million trucks coming in and out of the UK and onto the continent every year are going to be able to clear 17 customs agents at 20 minutes a truck and keep frictionless borders. And also, I'd like, and this follows on from a post Nigel Farage put on Twitter yesterday or the day before, calling the BMA an absolute disgrace in regards to the shortage of medical supplies. Now, medical isotopes, they currently travel under what is known as Class 7 ADR. They have a limited shelf life. You need a specialist ADR licence to transport them. You need insurance. Now, I had an ADR licence. You have medicines. They travel in refrigerated vehicles on express services all over Europe. I know somebody that does it. If the temperature drops by 1 degree, the whole lot gets binned. You have blood samples. You have infectious substances. You have a wide variety of medical consignments that travel under the ADR licence. When we leave with no deal in March 2019, we will drop out the framework of the ADR agreements that have been adopted by the European Union, which means nothing will come in and out. And also, more interestingly, the processed food that is being stockpiled in this country, the food flavourings that go into those foods are actually Class 3 hazardous goods in their own right and are flammable. So when you eat a hot cross bun, it's a flammable liquid in its pure form. Vanilla is flammable. Plant extracts are flammable. Honestly, I've transformed it all, right?
But Kieran, I can tell you that from pretty much all that you've raised, especially when it comes to the isotopes, in Ian Duncan Smith's Telegraph column, he said, we're just going to copy and paste all those things. Jason, is that going to work?
I can't see how it can work, because while we can create our own rules and regulations for within the United Kingdom, they've got to be also agreed by other partners that we're trading with. As you're crossing borders, you've got to have an agreement with another country. You can't just say, my rule is this, therefore it's fine. Mm-hmm. But Kieran, you shouldn't worry too much about those queues in Dover and Folkestone. Do you know why?
Go on.
It's because the UK is only entitled to 1,224 driving licence permits.
Yes, they are indeed.
1,224.
Hang on, what does that mean? Explain that to me.
Because currently the UK is a member of the European Union,
right?
So we have an authority to be able to issue truck drivers driving licences to drive these dangerous chemicals and the things that Kieran was just talking about,
right?
And we're allowed to drive them cross borders into the European Union and elsewhere.
Okay.
When we leave the European Union, our ability to accredit truck drivers and truck drivers' licences will no longer be valid outside of the United Kingdom. So we can drive around England, Scotland, Ireland and Wales, but we can't drive outside the country anymore, and we're limited to 1,224 permits.
So to answer that, look, initially what we're saying is, so first of all, look, I think it's legitimate for any truck driver or anybody in the haulage industry to be concerned about the level of checks that are going to happen at any border. That is a legitimate concern. It's obvious that that you're going to be worried about that. But look, first of all, there are already checks at the border when you board the ferry or go on the Eurostar. There is no proposal, by my understanding, to check every single truck leaving the UK. Similarly, look, first of all, the UK is committed to not clogging up our own roads by laborious checks. That isn't, so there is not going to be the hard border in that sense. But what Jason's just come out with is he's effectively dumped the argument for a hard border and said, let's shut the border altogether. Look, that policy, yeah, if you limit 1,000 trucks a year or whatever.
It's not
fundamentally, do you believe, Jason, that the day after Brexit, the European Union is going to say, you're only allowed 1,000 trucks a year, let's shut the port of Calais?
It's not me saying that. This is the legal consequence.
Is it going to happen? It's never going to happen.
The only way it couldn't is if we have a deal, we get a trade agreement. If you read the treaty of the European Union, read the treaty for the functioning of the European Union, they are not able to break it.
Do you believe that the day after Brexit, we are going to effectively close the port of Calais? Because 1,000 trucks a year, there would be no point having it open.
Correct. I agree with you.
So you believe that, so once again, I can't bet you, but you believe the port of Calais will close entirely.
I'm telling you what the legal consequence is of our decision.
Let's talk to someone who goes to the port of Calais every day. Kieran, what do you think is going to happen the day after Brexit?
I'll tell you what's going to happen. The port of Calais, Dover, has 258 lanes. Right, each lane houses 4 trucks. You do the maths. It counts to about 1,038 trucks or something that can park in the port of Dover. Now, you have 17 customs agents around Folkestone and Dover. You have to have them on the border.
But Kieran, can I just say this to you? The British Border and Immigration Service, whatever they're called, are not obliged to check absolutely every single truck, and are not proposing to do that.
Let Kieran answer.
What you're saying is 17 people are going to check every truck. They're not.
No, what I'm trying to say, right, is that can you name me one country in the world that has an open border that doesn't have a trade agreement with another country that you can just drive over?
Dozens
and
of them, hundreds of them. Most borders in the world. Was the question? Can you name a land border where there's no trade deal between the two countries?
Can you drive into Turkey from the European Union without clearing customs?
But you have to clear customs when you leave the port of Dover.
No, you don't do customs unless you go.
Okay, okay, but there is still the right to check the vehicle. The point is, the right to check the vehicle does not change. It's the level of enforcement, and the policy of the British government is clear. The enforcement will not be to check every vehicle,
but they will have to check the paperwork.
We worked it out,
which can be done remotely.
4.2 million trucks a year in and out of Dover and Folkestone. Right, Eurotunnel was built without the need to ever have customs infrastructure. When you come off the train at Eurotunnel, down onto the M20, there's absolutely nothing that can be built there. There's nothing that can be checked on English soil. When you come in to Dover Port, your first point of call off the M20, which is a dual carriageway, is the French customs, which has been shut for many, many years because they haven't needed it. That will open. That will be the first stop point. The trucks will immediately go straight out into the M20. If it took 20 minutes a truck to clear customs...
Which it won't.
I'll tell you what, come on a job with me one day,
okay,
and I'll show you what is involved in going to clear a T1 or a carnet.
Okay, Alexis, do you reckon I should actually do that?
I think anything to knock some sense into you, but, if you do it, I want you to actually pay attention rather than spout out rubbish.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll make you a deal, Kieran. I will go with my little handheld camera with you one day, and me and Alexis can watch it back later, and you can criticise me however you want.
I've done it for 15 years, right? I've had my van ripped to pieces in Larvik in Norway because they didn't agree with my carnet, right? I've been stuck at Customs House for 8 hours because they didn't agree with the valuation of the DNA equipment I was taking to an exhibition. I've been on the Swiss border for 5 hours because I had the same problem, right? I know someone that had urgent medical supplies in a refrigerated Sprinter going to Malta that got stuck at Customs House in Dover for 26 hours because of one problem on their T1 form. Now, when you go from London to Paris, you're going to have to clear exactly the same paperwork as what you would as if you was going to Switzerland or Norway. And I put 20 minutes, which has been incredibly generous as customs clearance. When you have 4.2 million trucks at 20 minutes a truck, that's 17 agents and 300 truck parking spaces that they have at the moment, you work out how long that queue's going to be. And that's where your gridlock will come from.
Okay.
And I'm telling you now, one last thing, right? Yep. One last thing. The medical supplies won't be able to come in and out, A, because they'll be stuck trying to get in and out of the country, and B, they will not meet the requirements for travel under hazardous terms, which is the ADR licence. I had an ADR licence. I've had all sorts of nasties in the back of my vehicles. I know exactly how it works, and I can see what's going to happen. And you try telling people what's going to happen.
And then you're accused of Project Fear when you're telling people what's going to happen. Kieran, sorry to cut you off, and I'm great to have met you actually on the air, but I need to move on because there's other people who've got lots and lots of calls. Harry is called from Portsmouth. Welcome to the show, Harry. What do you want to say?
Oh, yeah, hello there, Alexis. I'm going to be a bit roundabout. I'm going to quote that Airbus. The well-known Airbus will leave the country, etc.
Yeah.
I've got a copy of the Portsmouth News here, the local paper, April the 26th. Headline, Brexit threat to satellite jobs. 100 jobs could go, could be at risk. Then, a week or so later, May the 3rd, aerospace giant Airbus has said it would be eager to back a new UK, remember when we said we'd build our own, a new UK GPS satellite project. So in the space of a week, Airbus was coming out and saying there'd be panic stations. And a week later, they'd said they'd be eager to build a UK-only satellite system.
See, the Galileo program is what you're talking about, which is a European, pan-European sat-nav program, basically. It allows you to use the European Union satellites, which are up in the space, and a lot of those satellites were actually built in the UK. There's a satellite manufacturing company, would you believe, in Guildford, just south of London. These companies will no longer be able to build satellites as part of the largest sat-nav program that's ever existed on the planet, the most advanced system that exists on the planet. We will be excluded from it. So we're going to build our own. Well, with some sellotape and matchsticks.
We've got a free American
I think that is unfair to turn around and say that there is what's it called, Inmarsat in Guildford, and if they were to make their own satellite, it would be made with sellotape.
Oh no, these are very high tech things. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the UK's satellite system. It's going to be a cut down version.
Look, the UK is a market leader in the space industry, whether that be sat navs or whether that be communication satellites or whatever. Look, obviously, it's a disappointment that the EU do not want us to be part of their project, but that is their perfect right.
It's not
the idea that the space industry would cease to exist. Always remember something. The satellite television alone is a huge economic driver in this country. That's not going to cease.
Okay, I've got to take a quick break. I'm trying to fit all your calls, texts and tweets in, or we're going to be straight back after these short messages. But if you do want to call, 0344 499 1000 is the number you need.
Talk Radio. Digital debate for the UK.
Pick up your phone and Talk Radio.
We'll get you talking. It's here, but not for long. Existing and new customers can get Sky's best ever offer on Sky Sports and Entertainment, both in stunning HD. Enjoy over 500 epic live football games and indulge in award-winning shows on Sky Atlantic, all for only £40 a month, saving you over £350. But this offer won't last long. Search sky.com. £20 standard setup for new Sky TV customers. Kit loaned at no cost. New 18-month minimum terms requires HDTV. Saving based on 18-month minimum contract versus £60 per month out of contract.
Vauxhall Vivaro, for the van man driving to Derby, for the van woman delivering to Cardiff, for the van drivers of Great Britain. 4 years free servicing, 4 years warranty, 4 years roadside assistance, 4 years 0% APR. Vauxhall, British brand since 1903. Conditional sale, 4 years 0% APR. Minimum 18% deposit plus VAT at 20% on total price. Financed by Vauxhall Finance, subject to status. 18 plus business users only. T's and C's, mileage limitations and exclusions apply. Search Vivaro offers.
For everyone who wants more from their broadband. For everyone who wants to stream box sets day and night. For everyone who wants to listen to their playlists upstairs and down. Switch to TalkTalk. We've got your back. Our totally unlimited fibre comes with our powerful Wi-Fi hub, giving you a Wi-Fi signal that can't be beaten by any of the other big providers. And a guarantee that if you don't love your new fibre, you're free to leave any time in your first 30 days. And it's 30% off right now. So why wouldn't you switch? TalkTalk, for everyone. 18-month contract conditions apply.
Talk Radio, traffic and travel.
In Derbyshire on the M1, there's been a breakdown at junction 25 for Nottingham. One lane is closed on the exit Slip Road. Looking at Staffordshire on the M54 westbound, there's been an accident at junction 1 for Wolverhampton. The main carriageway is closed and traffic has been diverted down and under the main carriageway via the exit and entry Slip Roads. And in Bedfordshire on the M1 southbound, there's been a breakdown between junction 12 for Flitwick and junction 11A for Dunstable. One lane is closed. I'm Susie McFadden.
At Motorama, we want you to stop buying cars. Stop paying eye-watering deposits. Stop signing up for complicated PTP, CPT finance packages and start leasing instead. Because with Motorama, you can lease a brand new VW Golf for just £255 a month.
18 plus, initial rental £1,530, term 47 months, 8,000 miles per year, T's and C's apply.
Go to Motorama.com. You'll never buy a car again.
Get something for the weekend with Alexis Conrad. The Saturday Show on Talk Radio. We'll get you talking.
Welcome back to the show with me, Alexis Conrad, here on Talk Radio. With me, I have Jason Hunter, trade expert, and Andre Walker. And you know what? We are flying by the seat of our pants here. There's so much texting and tweeting and people calling that Jason has kindly agreed to stay until 6 o'clock with us. So Jason's going to be here for the next half hour. If you've got any questions for Jason, if you're wondering about how things will work, I'm going to read some of your texts and your tweets, questions straight to Jason. He's going to be answering them on air. But if you've got more, you can tweet us at Talk Radio. You can text Talk to 87222, and you can also dial in 0344 499 1000, the number you need, just like Adam has done from Sheffield. Welcome to the show, Adam. What do you want to say?
Oh, g'day, mate. First time caller, so I'm a little bit nervous like the other guy earlier.
Yeah, but he wasn't nervous at all. He hammered us. So, I'm not buying that one. Adam, what's your question?
Well, this is a question for, is it Andre there?
Yes, Andre's here.
Right, Andre, you've got a trade expert there, Jason Hunter.
Yes.
Good as gold, right? Why don't you listen to trade experts, to medical professionals, to Nobel Prize-winning scientists?
Okay, I can answer.
Hang on, you're interrupting, but you don't listen to the experts in their fields, all of whom are saying Brexit will have a negative impact on their fields. My brother is a physician. He's a consultant physician in the National Health Service. Half of his team have left. He works in elderly care in South Yorkshire. He is an eminent guy in his field. Brexit is having a negative effect. Brexit is having a negative effect on my career, my job. I'm less able to earn due to Brexit. Why can't people who want to leave the EU listen to the experts? And I include Boris Johnson and Michael Gove. What are your qualifications for deciding that this is a better course of action?
Okay, Adam.
I've lived all over the world, and I have never known a country leave a trade bloc in this manner.
Okay, Adam, I think it's fair to let Andre answer that. Andre?
Yeah, I think one of the toxicities about this debate is this thing that kind of happens all the time, particularly on Twitter, which is if you do not agree with the experts, you are not entitled to an opinion, and you should simply shut up, stop complaining, and do whatever it is that the great experts say. Always remember, these are the great experts that said we'd lose 2 million jobs.
Hang on. No. I'm not going to let you get away with stuff like that.
Me either.
When you go to see your doctor and he says, Andre, you need to start drinking less fizzy, sugary drinks, smoking less, and eating healthy food. Is that Project Fear for you?
Look,
no. Is it Project Fear for you?
Let me answer that. Look, there is no harm in people raising legitimate concerns about a period of instability.
Absolutely none. I agree with that.
No problem with that. But that's not what the caller's saying. The caller's saying, won't you sit down, shut up, and listen to the experts, and by extension, go along with whatever the experts are telling you to do. And what the experts are telling me to do is to say that actually, for practical reasons, I should no longer believe in an independent Britain. Well, alas, I do.
Jason?
We're not saying that you can't have your own opinion. We talked about the flying horse earlier on. I mean, you can have an opinion that horses can fly, and I'll say you can't because horses can't fly. My opinion is based in facts and evidence. If you're going to contradict the experts...
Jason, it's not based in facts and evidence. Here's the point. What you are saying to me effectively is this. There may be problems importing medical isotopes after Brexit.
No. You're misinterpreting.
Hang a second.
Don't misrepresent me.
If you're misrepresenting, you've got to allow Jason to say
what I'm saying is...
You just said, I deal in facts, and by extension what you're saying is, Andre, you're talking rubbish.
Which you are.
Here's the point.
Go on.
You say, I can prove that the economy will be worse after Brexit.
No, I'm telling you, I'm quoting a specific...
That's not the point. That's not the point I want to make. That means, by extension, automatically... we should support remaining in the EU. That's where your assumption comes in. Your assumption is...
I'm not making assumptions.
Your assumption is that all of these practical, granular details together add up to simply a fait accompli that we should all say, oh, we were wrong about Brexit. I'm a constitutional conservative. I do not believe in being ruled from Brussels. Now, whether that's going to cause instability to achieve our independence is of no concern to me.
But surely, if you're a constitutional conservative, you would... value democracy in the United Kingdom.
I do. That's why I support the referendum result.
So you support the referendum result. If you look at the constitutional process that we would normally have to go through, any Western civilized democracy on the planet would go through a process. Well, we had an advisory referendum. I'm not going to go over it much, but very simply, we had an advisory referendum. The Prime Minister, Theresa May, all by herself, without consulting her cabinet, without consulting the House of Commons or any of our other elected representatives in government, she wrote a letter by herself, and on her head be it, invoking Article 50 of the Treaty of Lisbon. She did it by herself.
Jason, where's my referendum on the European Constitution rebranded to the Lisbon Treaty? Where's my referendum on deciding that I want to be a citizen?
We vote for elected representatives.
Hang on a second. How can you castigate as undemocratic the decision to remove the undemocratic decision to create a European Union? We are not a divided country because of Brexit. We are not a divided country because of Brexit. We are a divided country because we were pushed into this project without any decision. We voted in the 1970s for a benign trade arrangement.
For members of Parliament? Do you not vote for members of the European Parliament on a regular basis?
Hang on a second. It's not me that's castigating this situation as being undemocratic. It's you. You're saying electing Gordon Brown who pushed through the Lisbon Treaty, should trump the referendum when we voted to leave. I think that's madness.
Adam, you're still there.
Sorry.
We're trying, Adam. We're doing our best, but it seems that Andre just refuses to accept opinions that he doesn't like. Whether they come from experts or not, it doesn't seem to make a difference. Is that what you're finding frustrating?
This is what absolutely terrifies me about Brexit. I mean, I've lived in Australia. I'm an Australian citizen. I'm a dual national of the UK and Australia. And Australia is pursuing closer ties with its neighbours, most notably New Zealand. It's pursuing closer ties with Indonesia, Japan. And we are leaving a trading bloc that already has these agreements in place on the basis of an ideology. It's an ideology. That was one basically. I mean, I don't want to say the R word, but it was one on immigration. I mean, that's what where I'm from. There's there's a huge UKIP support. You know, there's a huge number of people who are anti-immigrant. I've been an immigrant. You know, I've emigrated from the UK. I've come back, and we are basically leaving this trading bloc that has massive ramifications as far as I can see. And you know, in engineering, in science, in medicine, when I've got people who say to me, who are friends of mine and friends of my brothers, who say, we're losing our staff in the NHS, we are losing our ability to trade. And, you know, you had the van man on earlier, Kieran, right? He's talking about 4.2 million trucks coming in and out of Dover. He's scratching the surface. I inspect highly regulated equipment in ports and oil refineries, right? I do a lot of work at various ports around the country, inspecting the key cranes, right? One of the ports in this country last year moved 20 million TEUs. Now, that's 20-foot equivalent units. They moved 1 million TEUs by rail alone. That's one port. Imagine the log jams that we're going to get, not just at Dover. Forget Dover. That's small fry. I mean, Kieran, you know, I'm not wanting to rubbish what he says or what he does, but you have got Southampton, you've got Tilbury, you've got
I mean, Kieran's
London Gateway. There are literally millions of containers coming in and out of this country every year, and all of those are going to have inspections by customs officials, X-rays.
Yeah, well, not according to Andre. Andre says that our government can choose not to inspect them, apparently. Adam,
but what about the ones going out then, my friend?
Well, I don't think
you don't have to inspect those either.
We're actually doing.
Receiving them.
Look. Always remember, if you are unhappy with the fact that the European Union wants a hard border, if you're unhappy with the fact the European Union wants to limit the amount of trucks, if you're unhappy with the fact the European Union does not want bilateral agreements with us, talk to the European Union, not me.
Okay, well, hang on. I can't even begin to deal with that one. Adam from Sheffield, thank you very much for your call. I want to deal with some of the tweets that we got here because they are good ones for Jason to have a crack at. Paul on Twitter says part of our EU contribution pays for services supplied back to the UK, such as Euratom, EASA, which is the Aviation, Medicines Agency, etc. How many agencies do we receive services from, I think he means, and how much will it cost for the UK to replace those agencies and services?
Wow, bearing in mind I'm in a radio studio and I don't have all the notes together. I'll give you a couple of examples. If you take the European Investment Bank, for example, they've invested 29 billion euros in the UK. We're one of the biggest recipients of funding from the European Investment Bank. Covers all sorts of things all across the United Kingdom. You've got the European Social Fund, which match funds UK government funding for adult education, charities, third sector. And this is absolutely critical because when you take away half the funding for charities in the UK, this is going to be devastating for them, especially at the same time as the government is pushing through austerity and cutting back existing budgets for social care and things like the local authority level. You've got the European Cohesion Fund. You've got the Connecting Europe facility, extending the M4 corridor out through the end of Wales. You know, there's so many different aspects of our everyday lives that rely on the funding that we're getting from the European Union. But the bigger thing is the number of jobs that it's creating and the number of people in the UK that have got jobs today that are paying taxes, they're paying PAYE, they're paying their national insurance.
And you're not talking about EU immigration jobs. You're talking about people employed in this country, such as people, for example, in the Nissan factory, who it might be a Japanese company, but they're there because they have access to the EU.
Exactly. 77% of the cars that we build in the UK, whether it's Honda in Swindon, whether it's Rolls-Royce, whether it's Bentley, Ford, or Nissan up in Sunderland, they build cars for the European Union.
Look, funnily enough, unlike Jason, I'm sorry about this, I do have my computer open. Jason didn't know to bring his computer in. So I do have the figures in front of me of how much it's going to cost to replace these EU institutions. So essentially, the UK paid in 13.1 billion to the EU budget in 2016, of which we received received 4.5 billion back. So that means that we will get back 8.6 billion.
Yeah.
Fundamentally...
By the way, you do know that this rebate, we don't actually send it and get it back?
Start at 8.6.
Look, can I just make...
Oh, no, facts. Move away from that.
I think it's important. Well, it's from fullfact.org. Presumably you like that.
No, we do like that.
I think the point is this. The EU does not have a huge budget, and this 350 million a week, the truth of the matter is, for a country the size of Britain, 350 million pounds a week is actually not a lot of money. To you and I, it sounds absolutely colossal, but to a government it's not. But the truth of the matter is, the implication of the text is, can we afford to replace EU institutions that will cease to have jurisdiction in the UK after Brexit? The answer is yes.
How? We've lost 30 billion quid already out of Treasury.
What you do is you cease to pay those fees to the European Union, and you instead pay for the services to be provided locally.
Yeah, but right now,
the budget. You move the budget from an EU contribution to a local funding contribution.
The point is, HM Treasury's availability of cash from taxpayers is shrinking. It's shrinking significantly, and we haven't even left the EU.
But also, Andre, surely not even someone of your capacity would say that actually, in a European Union where we all contribute to the budget of Euratom, we all contribute to the budget of the Medicines Agency, to the ESA, it's going to be cheaper for us to set up our own one, which we pay for ourselves without the help of the other EU 27.
And with less money.
Well, hang on. Firstly, on my capacity, I'm a former economics advisor at London City Hall.
Right.
My capacity.
So you should be able to understand this.
No. Hang on a second. I don't think it's fair to simply deride everybody who supports Brexit as a moron who doesn't understand the situation.
I would never say that. I would never say that. What I'm saying is that something that is quite simple to say, look, it's going to be more expensive for us to set all these things up by ourselves than it is doing it with 27 other people.
Look,
you cannot argue with that. And I don't understand why you are arguing with it.
Hang on. Well, first of all, I've always made the point that I believe an independent Britain in of itself is a useful thing. I've also accepted that there will be some instability. Inevitably, we're becoming an independent country again. There's going to be instability associated with that. But look, my point has been consistently throughout this show that there is a difference between some short-term instability and the absolute Armageddon that's going to take place. And what's just been suggested, remember, is this, that we will be unable to fund an alternative to the European institutions that exist at the moment. The idea that that is true is fanciful.
I think I've explained it, but I don't. Jason, can you find another argument that maybe will convince Andre?
The government don't have any money. The people of the country who are working, they provide the money through taxes, an income tax, a PAYE and corporation tax that goes into HM Treasury, which creates the pot of money, which is then split to the NHS, Department of Work and Pensions, onto welfare, onto pensions, across the public sector spending. Yeah? When you have fewer people working, which is already happening.
Which is the assumption that's going to happen after we leave the EU.
I'm not talking about Project Fear. I'm talking about today, what's happened in the last 2 years since the referendum.
Let me throw this back at you. So there's a difference between what will happen and what would happen.
Is happening
what
right
would
now.
happen in my ideal utopia. My ideal utopia is that we would use Brexit.
So you're talking unicorns.
Hang on a second. What I would like to do, and by the way, people like Boris Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg agree with me, what we would like to do fundamentally...
I wouldn't shout about that.
I wouldn't bring them up
is to massively reduce the regulatory burden and the tax burden on the UK after Brexit. Now, always remember this. If a tobacco tax is to prevent you smoking, what is a business tax? What is the purpose of that? Fundamentally,
this is not applicable to this discussion.
But hang on a second. You cannot have only one side of the seesaw. Yes, there will be instability from leaving the EU, but there will also be an ability to reduce tax and regulation, specifically regulation.
We can reduce corporation tax tomorrow.
Everybody knows that if you reduce regulation on businesses will be more profitable. So I dispute that. We're going to have a problem with unemployment in this country because you've based that on the assumption we're going to keep the same regulations as we have now.
Okay, can I just ask something because of what you've said? Because I don't know, and I'm going to ask Jason. Is the amount of taxation we put on businesses and on our citizens regulated by the EU?
No, it's not. We've got one of the lowest corporation tax rates across the European Union.
So why can't we do that already then, Andre?
Well, we are starting to reduce
the regulations.
There are budgetary constraints that exist within the EU, but nonetheless, I think the key thing is about regulation, and fundamentally, all of these. Lexis,
so maternity pay, holiday pay.
Let me say this. Well, you can pass laws on maternity pay in the UK.
Okay, go on.
But look, there is an assumption that when we leave the EU, that we will not benefit from the reduction in regulation. That is the point. So essentially, what you say is,
for example,
we're going to lose.
What regulations do you want to take away?
We're going to lose. Well, I think the working time directive's nonsense.
So you want to make people work more hours for less money?
I want people to have the right to work longer hours should they wish to do so. Look, I am a conservative. I do not believe in state regulation of all of these things.
But can I just ask a question?
The trajectory is, and constantly in these debates, the problem that we have is that people say, I'm going to list you all the problems with Brexit and not think about any of the benefits. And the benefit is a reduction in regulation on business.
How does that help Bob in Blackburn or Pete in Peterborough or Nick up in Sunderland? They've got less regulation.
So hang on.
But they've lost their job.
So how is it? So I'll give you a stupid example, completely stupid, crazy example.
No.
When we leave the European Union, Bombay Duck will become legal again. You know how that was made illegal by the European Union? So how is it beneficial to Mr. Khan in Blackburn that at the moment the EU has helped him by making one of his most popular products in the 1970s illegal? How that's helped him? The fact is, the vast majority of economic activity...
For the record, we're in the 21st century now, not the 70s anymore.
Well, hang on a second. But these things are always belittled. The fact that most small businesses in this country do not export to the single market.
324,000 of them do.
They deal with their
324,000.
What they are dealing with, the vast majority of economic activity in the UK, as you know, does not go as an export to the European Union.
I'm using EVU's figures.
And they are subject nonetheless. They're subject nonetheless to EU regulations on stupid things like Bombay Duck and on working time directives.
That's ridiculous.
And so fundamentally,
it's a ridiculous argument.
Let's take away those regulations
can I just
from
quickly,
all businesses.
Can you just stop for a second? Because I want to ask you something, because we've got to go to a break and we've got another caller and we've got plenty of texts and tweets to read out. Brilliant. But you keep saying, I want an independent Britain and I want to be free of rules, controls and regulations. You do realise that if you want to trade with anybody, you have to have rules and regulations.
But that's not called a European Parliament, and it doesn't have 7 presidents.
Look, what's not? Andre, do you know what? I'm going to go to break because I'm just going to shout at you.
Hang on,
I'm going to be in here talking rubbish.
There is no president of NAFTA. There is no parliament of NAFTA. There is no flag of NAFTA. There is no anthem of NAFTA.
Andre, next month,
there is no external security service of NAFTA.
I'll be in Geneva on the 13th and 14th of next month at the World Trade Organization, at the Secretariat. Yes. And I can tell you that there are a number of people in Geneva sitting in the global headquarters of the World Trade Organization that would completely disagree with you. But then they're experts. What do they know?
Hang on, that NAFTA is the same as the EU? Well, of course it's nonsense. One is a free trade bloc, the other is plainly a country.
NAFTA is a country.
One is a free trade bloc.
He means Europe. He means Europe as a country. But you know what? There does come a point where you can't. And you know, you're very clever with the stuff that you do. I think it's your Breitbart training where you sort of spout this stuff out, and it's like, where do you begin when we're trying to have a conversation, and all you come back with is the EU is a country.
Alexis, the problem is that people like you, and no disrespect, but people like you live in a North London metropolitan liberal lifestyle.
Of course we do. Of course we do. Because Jacob Rees-Mogg is not an elite. Millionaire Aaron Banks is not an elite.
I'm not being critical of that. The point I'm making is that when you listen to
and you're saying because you live in Windsor, you're not an elite.
Oh, of course I am, plainly.
Right, so why do you bring that in the conversation then?
The point I'm trying to make is this. The reason why these arguments sound crazy is simply because you don't talk to people who genuinely believe them. When Jason turns around and says, we can't risk our prosperity on leaving the EU, there are people in Wigan...
I never said that. You're putting words in my mouth.
I haven't said. There are people in Wigan who say, what prosperity? Fundamentally, you are being asked to defend a system that doesn't make this country great, that doesn't make people in Salford rich.
But it does create jobs.
That's
for
very
households
important.
and livelihoods.
Right, we're going to come back to all your texts and tweets and calls. We're going to take a quick break. Remember, Jason Hunter is here, is a trade expert. Ask him all the questions you want to ask him. There's plenty of them on Twitter I'm going to get to after the break. 0344 499 1000 is the number you need if you want to call in, or you could tweet us at Talk Radio.
Across the UK, online and on DAB. Access all radios.
Talk Radio. Give it some lip.
When a stroke strikes, the damage spreads like a fire in the brain. When you spot any single one of the signs, think and act fast. F. Face. Has it fallen on one side? A. Arms. Can they raise them? S. Speech. Is it slurred? T. Time to dial 999. The faster you act, the better their chances. So even if you're not sure, act fast. Make the call. Dial 999.
Your time is now, and every second counts. Register with the Open University today, and you'll soon see the difference. Pick up that pay rise before picking up your degree. Get that promotion before getting to graduation. Be your future self sooner with our career-boosting courses. Visit openuniversity.co.uk before time runs out. Registration closes the 13th of September. The Open University. What's stopping you?
Hey, Philip Schofield here. WeBuyAnyCar.com reckon you could find out what your car's worth in under 60 seconds. I know, I didn't believe it myself, so I timed it. And it's true. It actually took me only 53 seconds. Not that it's a race. So if you want to find out how much your car's worth, or just want to beat my time, enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com. Think I might give it another go. 49. Get in.
Admin fee may apply. For more information, see WeBuyAnyCar.com/info.
Talk Radio, traffic and travel.
In Somerset on the M5 northbound, a van's broken down at junction 21 for Weston-super-Mare. One lane is closed, it's very heavy on approach. In Staffordshire on the M54 westbound, there's been an accident at junction 1 for Wolverhampton. The main carriageway is closed and traffic's been diverted down and under the carriageway via the exit and entry slip roads. And also in Staffordshire on the M6 southbound, there's been a breakdown at junction 13 for Stafford South. Between there and junction 12 for Gailey, one lane is blocked. I'm Susie McFadden.
Give your nephew a buzz cut. Pretty good at haircuts. Open a proper salon. How much is too much shampoo? Chop, wash, chop. Uh-oh. No more chopping for him. Need more hands. Need a bigger salon. Rent next door. Relax. Until the morning. Direct Line keeps up with your world when you make changes to your staff, stock or location. Change to us and we won't be beaten on price. Can your business insurance do that? Search Direct Line for business.
New customers only, excluding van. Cover on equivalent basis to ours. Qualifying criteria apply. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
Entertaining debate, big-name guests and outspoken opinions. The Saturday Show with Alexis Conrad on Talk Radio. We'll get you talking.
Welcome back to the show with me, Alexis Conrad, here on Talk Radio. I just had to ask what a Bombay duck is.
I can't believe you've never had Bombay duck.
I'm a Greek boy. Well, how would I know what a Bombay duck is? But Paul Grimes said, Bombay duck is a Brexit dividend. Good grief.
Well, no. Look. First of all, I defend to the hilt Indian restaurants. You can see that I like my food, and I look forward to the day when we can all enjoy Bombay duck. The day after, it will be the only thing we'll have during the Brexit famine to survive.
Okay, well, look, Liz has called from Wiltshire. Welcome to the show, Liz.
Hi, how you doing?
Oh, very good. What would you like to say?
I really want to focus on Andre.
Well, that's a surprise. Listen, we've got Jason here.
I'm not coming back again.
I really don't want you talking over me, okay?
Okay, yes.
Please firm in this. I've had enough of you talking over everybody, so I don't want to be spoken over. Why do you speak over? And also, why do you shout so much? You know, you really don't have to shout to win an argument, and people should listen to that.
Is this me or Andre?
Very rude. This is to Andre, who is shouting and being just he wants to win an argument by just bluster and shouting at everybody. And I don't want him shouting over me, and if he shouts over me, I will actually call him up on it. So firstly, I'd like to say, you know, these Brexiters all want to go back to the empire days of, you know, Britain's great and everything. When we did build up our empire, what we did was actually went over to countries that didn't have any rules and regulations, and we set up constitutions with rules and regulations. And now he's saying that he wants to go and completely smash our constitution and all our rules and regulations so that we can demise into some sort of absolute chaos. Because if you don't have rules and regulations, what do you end up with?
Okay, well, firstly, look, I've got to say one thing to you. When you first came on, it was Alexis who was talking over you, and I fully got the blame for that. So, okay, look, first of all...
No, you've got your blame for the whole show because you're so loud and you're so aggressive that you actually just make me feel very, very angry.
You tell him, Liz.
I'm lovable in real life. I'm lovable in real life. Look...
No, I don't believe you are lovable. And you found a way of blustering, the same as Nigel Farage, and people think it sounds clever, but it isn't clever. It's absolute rubbish.
Okay, Liz, let him answer the question.
Okay, firstly,
some of his own treatment.
Firstly, I don't want to return to a time when Britain was great. I believe Britain is great now, and I think that is fundamental to everything that a Brexiteer believes in.
So why are you destroying it then, Andre?
Well, I don't believe I'm destroying it. I believe I'm setting it free. On the issue of empire. On the issue of empire.
You have no rules and regulations. We have Mad Max dystopia.
Okay, well, look.
Rules are what keep things in order.
Okay, look, here's the most important thing. You just asserted that the way that the British Empire was rich was because we brought in rules and regulations across the world.
I said the reason
the truth.
I don't think rich. We did take money.
We set
up constitutions and rules in countries that didn't have them.
The reason why we were rich was because we began the process of global free trade, and I believe the European Union fundamentally damages global free trade, and I wish to return to those days.
Quiet, Andre.
Clearly, your goal is about you or your set making money. That's all you care about. You have no concern and no empathy for people losing their jobs. You have no concern about absolute lawlessness breaking out in the country because all you want to do is make money. Now, there's more to life than making money. We need rules and structures, otherwise things fall into absolute chaos. So why do you have no concern for that? You probably don't live in England, do you? Or you've got a nice little home somewhere else in New Zealand, a bunker somewhere?
He lives in Windsor.
No, you're not going to believe this. My house is nicknamed the bunker because it's a basement. So yes, I do have a bunker.
He does have a bunker. Liz, I need to get on and use the time that Jason's here with us. But thank you for your call, Liz. And apologies. And I've got to say that, Andre, yes, he does talk over people, but then so do I. And it's a good reminder for both of us, Liz, that we need to keep calm. But sometimes we can't help it. You get quite passionate. Now, Jason, we've got a few minutes left. I know that you passionately actually wanted to talk about rules of origin when it comes to the WTO stuff. Why do you think rules of origin are so important? And actually, we've had a couple of questions about rules of origin. I'm just going to read you one of them. They haven't put their name on there, but it says, can you please tell me how the UK will meet the rule of origin on car parts that are assembled into foreign-owned cars post-Brexit? A Land Rover Discovery has 60% imported parts from the EU. Post-Brexit, we'll have to magically open factories to replace those parts in order to export our cars.
Yeah, it's a really good question. The simple answer is we won't be able to.
Right.
Because the cars that we produce won't be UK-made cars because more than the minimum percentage of the vehicle is not a UK product. It's like when you take a slab of steel, we might import it into South Wales, Stephen Kinnock's constituency, where Tata Steel have got those steel operations. They might buy sort of raw steel imported from Ukraine or Russia or India or somewhere else in the world. That giant slab comes into the steelworks down there. It's rolled flat, so it's very, very thin. It's then colour-coated or galvanised with zinc, and it's stamped and cut into panels for refrigerators, washing machines, microwave ovens,
find its way into everything.
And then we sell that flat steel out into other countries all over the world. Now, when we sell that steel, in the future, post-Brexit and the new nirvana that Andre loves so much, we will have to work out what percentage of that value of that final steel panel is UK, and then the relevant tariff will be applied to that piece. And what's the tariff between the Ukraine and the UK when we imported that original steel into the UK? And then how much is that? What's the relationship between the Ukraine and the third country we're now exporting it to? The actual the process of calculating that's really, really, really complex.
And of course, the same would be applied to, for example, lamb that we import from New Zealand. Yeah. How much of it ends up in the UK? Does it go into processed foods that then goes into the rest of Europe, etc.? So
I did an example with Argentinian beef. Say we import 20 tons of Argentinian beef. We export 2 tons to the European Union. It's £1,000 a ton. we just pay that 10% tariff to the European Union for those 2 tons that we've exported to them. But what if we take 10 tons of it and then chop it up and make beef curries? How much of that beef curry is that when it's exported? Is that Argentinian beef? What's the tariff on that? What percentage is it? And what if the other vegetables are imported from Asia? But country of origin doesn't just apply to products. It also applies to all sorts of different things in your life, like Talk Radio, for example. You have a country of origin of the UK when you're broadcasting across border into the European Union. It will be illegal for Talk Radio to be transmitting into France, Germany, and the rest of the EU 27 after March 29th next year.
Yeah, because what's going to happen if you're in France and you go on www.talkradio.co.uk, a big sign is going to come up saying this has been blocked in your country.
Well, it
exactly.
Could it be that's not going to happen?
No, but that happens already today.
It happens today already. If you
no, only because that stupid GDPR. By the way,
GDPR.
And actually, Andre,
we've got to repeal that.
Andre,
you're talking
rubbish once again. It is content. It's geo-fenced material. If you want to watch American Netflix, you cannot, because it's geo-fenced for America.
Look, the idea that Talk Radio is going to become illegal in Germany after Brexit, and that is going to be enforced.
Unwatchable.
Oh, come on.
Look, I'll tell you, the very first EU preparedness notice, when you Google it, when you get to the page, look at the very, very first one. That is exactly what it talks about. It also talks about .eu web domains, like Leave EU, and Leave means leave.eu. Those web domains will not be valid.
How can people have a website in Tuvalu, the .tv domains?
Because of agreements that have been made, either bilateral or with the European Union. We lose all of it. It all finishes. It ends. Out means out. Do you remember? Out. Everything's gone. We start again from scratch.
Andre's incensed. He doesn't believe a word of it, and that's the thing.
But he won't read the facts, though, Alexis. That's the problem. He won't read the legislation.
Look, I've tried to read the legislation, and it's very, very difficult to read and understand. And I think for people, the danger we're coming to is very, very difficult for them to engage. But hopefully, listeners to this will have learnt something, fingers crossed. Where can people find you, Jason? I know you tweet quite a lot. Tell us where people can find you, and maybe keep in touch with what's going on. I'll maybe ask you questions on Twitter, perhaps, if you're happy for that.
Please do, anytime. I'm at Jason J. Hunter.
Okay.
Easy peasy on Twitter. I'm also the middle guy on 3 Blokes in a Pub. I don't know if you get a chance.
What is that?
It's 3 Blokes in a Pub. Me coming from the perspective of international trade. Kieran, the van driver, who's travelled 1 million miles in and out of the European Union. And our third guy is Every Country, at Every Country. He's travelled to every single country on the planet without flying.
And what's that called? The
3 Blokes in a Pub.
3 Blokes in a Pub. You can find it on Facebook.
You find it on YouTube.
On YouTube. 3 Blokes in a Pub on YouTube. Jason, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
I'm pretty sure we're going to do this again. I think even Andre enjoyed it.
Do you know what? I've had a great time.
You did. He had a very good time.
And do you know what I've also done? I've got a photo of the two of you so I can tweet it to Jason J. Hunter on Twitter.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jason. It's been a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for all your text calls and your tweets. We will come back to this, of course, with Jason as well. Well, we can arrange it maybe for a couple of weeks' time. After the news, we are going to be talking Trump with our favourite man, Scott Lucas.
Talk Radio. Intelligent, organic entertainment.
Talk Radio.
We'll get you talking.